And so with that, I wanted to give 5 key lessons I learned on my 20s that will be helpful for the survival of any millennial or Gen Z or any person who's trying to soldier on this 10-year period that is the 20s. I'd like to think that these things that I'm going to share are very useful for you to survive the 20s because it's not going to be easy. Number 3 lesson is what gets measured gets managed. There are a lot of projects and goals that we are doing kasi we're excited. Pero we lose sight or not have a way to assess these things because we are not able to track, to document, or measure these things. All of these things, all of the projects that you wanted to pursue, it starts with determining what is important for you. What are the values that you have? Finances, time, health, your thoughts, your mental health, your relationships. At face value, una mo talaga may isip is money. And this is primarily about money matter. Because if you don't find a way to track your expenditure or your income flow, hindi mo talaga siya mamamanage ng maayos. And I'm not just talking about the list of items that you need to buy on your grocery run. I'm not even just talking about, tracking your expenses for this pay period or doing parating ng Christmas bonus. And the truth of the matter is, our expenses, our income flow, is not something that you look in a myopic view lang. Kailangan mo siyang tingnan in a bigger view, in long-term view, para makita mo kung ano yung trend, kung ano yung mga parts dito na nag-overspend ka, ano yung mga parts dito na you could always improve more or ma-budget mo pa siya ng maayos. When I track my expenses, it's always down to the last centavo. It goes down to the last centavo. And I document that before I do it in a notebook. Now I'm doing it in Notion or online or any other thing. My point here is you just need to track it. Don't just rely on the mental calculator that you have on your brain, because not all of us are best in math, and because the human brain is not a reliable tool to just keep or store facts. Kailangan mo talaga siyang pa-transpose to other things para makita mo talaga. But this is not just about money. Kung titingnan mo, if you're someone who values your mental health, your physical fitness, then you also track these things. Di mo napapansin, di ba? Kaya nga sa maraming mga fitness people na meron silang documentation or pictures from every single month that they've been working out. Or for example, for your mental health or for your thoughts, your diary or your journal is a way for you to document or track how your thoughts are running. It is only when you're able to look back at something can you have a realization na, okay, at this point, I'm better. At this point, this is my dark time. Gets ko kung ba't nangyari yon. This is what I simply did. In the absence of those documentation, hindi mo na ma-manage yung expectations mo, hindi mo na ma-manage kung ano yung future actions mo because wala kang clear basis or tangible basis to look at. But of course, I'm not going to tell you to overdo it na kailangan every single thing kailangan na document or kailangan mong i-micromanage. It really depends on what are the things that you put a value on, a premium on. And this is not me dictating kung ano yung mga bagay na kailangan mong i-manage. But the truth of the matter is, the things that you measure are the things that you're going to manage better. So conversely, try to ask yourself, what is something about your life na feel mo, hindi mo nakokontrol ng maayos, hindi mo na ma-manage ng maayos. That could be something that you needed to start tracking. Number 4, you need to communicate what you need or ask what you deserve. This is particularly prevalent sa Filipino culture na we're very passive, na very mahiyain, pakipot. There's a part in every Filipino who views assertiveness as something negative. This happens because we were raised in an environment, in school or in household, na where the authority figures are the ones who's controlling the tone, who's controlling the communication line. And tayo, as kids, as younger people, we feel that we have less voice when it comes to our lives. And so we, the children, got used to just lowering down our voice to accommodate the adults in the environment. Or sometimes, even if we do think na feel natin, nasasabi na natin yung gusto nating message, nasasabi natin kung ano yung point natin, if we assess the kind of language that we use, the tone that we use, hindi pala siya as clear or as direct as it should be. We always find a way to tone it down, to dumb it down, or to make sure that no one's going to be offended, whereas what we simply need to do is to be objective and to be truthful. Not necessarily offensive. That's not my point here, but being assertive on what you really need. Yung things that we do like pagpaparinig or pagpapakipot, waiting for someone to notice the behavior, for them to ask, ano ba nasa isip mo? Those are not direct ways of communicating. Pero nasanay tayo sa mga ganung bagay. And we carried it on our 20s na hindi natin alam kung paano i-voice out yung concerns natin in a very assertive and confident way. Precisely because of your refusal to be direct, miscommunication happened. In a personal story of mine, back in my college days, especially in my senior year, it was a very difficult time. I remember one aunt of mine, and she's really one of the supportive relatives of mine in terms of my finances. She gave me this biblical quote. I don't remember the exact words, but it goes along the lines of, you need to learn the value of asking for you to receive the blessings that you wanted. And that was an eye-opener for me. Na o nga naman no one is really that omniscient. Alam nila lahat yung mga sufferings mo, alam nila lahat ng mga needs mo. They needed someone to communicate that clearly, diba? You can't just assume that people understand what you need. The time that you understand that it's okay for you to ask, it's okay for you to express your needs, that is the time you embrace adulting. And you need to be comfortable with the language of assertiveness. You need to be comfortable with the word choice where you're saying, this is what I need, this is what I prefer, this is a non-negotiable for me, that is not something I want, that's beyond my boundary. And back on my early 20s, when I was doing well on my job and there was a promotion opportunity, even if there are other people na mas may tenure na or mas matagal na dun sa work, at that time, if I'm going to be honest with myself, I deserve that my performance be assessed para ma-check if qualified ba ako sa promotion. And I needed to communicate that to my employer. I need to communicate that to my boss. And over the years, I also learned how to renegotiate my salary because this is something na feel ko, nag-improve na ang skills ko, and I needed to tell that to the people paying me. But if you refuse to do that, hindi mag-a-accrue yung benefits at all. I'm not saying that every time you open your mouth, every time you become assertive, you will always get what you need. There are some people who are still going to reject it, or there will be times that there's going to be a debate, but that is always better than not talking about it at all. Dahil hindi mo man lang nakita kung ano yung magiging discussion. It is only when you start communicating and you have this dialogue to these people, may intindihan mo kung ano yung points nila, and therefore mas magiging clear sa'yo kung ano yung kailangan ma-improve in order for you to really get that in the future. Hindi naman to tungkol sa money matter lang. In terms of your relationships with your friends or your family, you also need to be very clear on how you communicate the things that you wanted. You have to learn how to respect your boundaries, and you need to communicate that to people. I remember when I had a very sensitive discussion with my mom and my brother when I decided to move out. What I instead did is to really tell it to my mom kung bakit ko gusto mag-move out, ano yung mga reasons ko, what I wanted to achieve. Although there were hiccups at the onset, they eventually understood why I wanted to do that. Kasi pag na-communicate mo yung reason, kung na-communicate mo yung rationale for the people who are important to you, they would eventually understand it and they would eventually respect it. But out of all the people that you will be communicating to, I also hope that you don't forget to communicate to yourself. You needed to learn how to ask yourself that maybe you needed rest, maybe you needed a break or help, diba? This is something that I have to learn in my 20s na hindi ako machine. Having a sense of value, understanding who you are, is the starting point of how you communicate these things. Kasi if hindi clear sa'yo of what your values are, if hindi clear sa'yo kung ano yung gusto mo, mas mahihirapan ka ma-communicate to. And eventually, how you communicate these things is something that you will eventually learn. And with that, connected to the last item is having a better sense of self means having a better sense of direction. What I wanted to emphasize here is there should be an ample time allotted for your self-discovery, for your character building in your 20s. It's normal for us to feel lost on this period or nararattle ka on this period. And if we are to confront our deeper sense of identity, wherein you have to acknowledge that yung years of conditioning na experience natin from our formative years, these are things that are shaped by schools, by the household, by church, by the small communities that we belong to. All of this happened on our formative years that we are not fully consenting adults. We are not really thinking independently. We rely on others to make the decisions for us. Of course, I'm not saying that all of these things that we learned when we were young are inherently wrong or automatically kailangan natin siyang i-reject. But especially on your 20s, this is a good period for you to reassess kung ano ba talaga yung mga things na natutunan mo that are still valuable to inherit or to continue in your 20s. This is the time wherein you should embrace self-determinism na you could always shape up your identity. Hindi mo kailangang i-carry over lahat on your 20s. If there are things that are not serving you well, you need to let go of that. And that is a way for you to make room for new developments, new learnings. Because the tendency is we are all over the place. We are trying to fulfill different roles imposed onto us by our families, by our communities, by different institutions. These are the different entities that are considered the identity shapers before. But now in your 20s, now that you're an adult, you are the best identity shaper for yourself. It's very difficult to have a sense of direction if we, our authentic self, are not the one doing the steering of the wheel. na lagi na lang tayong sumusunod sa decision of other people. You have your own voice. But the question now is, how exactly do you know these things? How exactly will you know what to do? Very crucial dito is kailangan mong ilatag yung mga different facets of identity. I am someone who rejects the notion that we are just one thing. We're actually multi-dimensional people na pwede nating ma-fulfill ang different roles and aspects of our identity. And once you can see it clearly, that is the time when you can pinpoint, okay, this is what I really believe in. This is who I am. I'm no longer this person. I am letting go of that part. I wanted to improve on this part. And what I simply did is I had a framework to rely on. I explained that on one YouTube video. Please click here to understand that. So whenever you feel lost, na hindi ka pa at peace with your sense of self, in this fast-paced world na kailangan on the go ka, that you feel that you need to operate like a machine, you might not be giving yourself ample time to introspect, to really have some quiet time with your own thoughts. In my 20s, I've equally prioritized my alone time or breaks or rest in the same way that I give value on hanging out with friends, especially on this period on our initial adulting phase. What you do now, figuring out who you are, this is something that's going to be beneficial in the long run. Biggest problem of not giving yourself the space and time for you to think about yourself is if you do that on the latter part of your adult life, you missed a lot of opportunities to do things, to enjoy things as your own authentic self. If you look at all of these things, these 5 key lessons that I learned, actually, I've thought of more pa, kaya lang ayoko maging novela or movie tong YouTube video na to. I tried to select on just 5, but I wanted to share more. Maybe I can do that on a future video. But these 5 things, mapapansin nyo, they're applicable in many aspects of our lives, diba? Different contexts, different situations. Because how we should view life is it's very holistic. Kailangan natin tingnan siya in a bigger picture and appreciate different elements and also understand na mayroong mga interconnection itong mga elements na to. Me doing this doesn't necessarily mean I've lived a perfect 20s period. Me doing this doesn't necessarily mean I'm a 30-year-old who got it all figured out. No. I believe no one is that confident to say that. But how I could view my past 10 years is I'm very proud of what I have done and I'm very proud of the kind of person that I've become. I am someone who wanted to highlight our ability to share our words, thoughts, and stories in our own terms. And you don't need to have a YouTube video to do this. You can simply post it, you can share it to your younger cousins, younger friends. You'd never know how much learning you can get by listening to other people's stories. In the same way that you would never really see how someone else could be touched with your life if you don't share it, diba? And thank you for watching, and I hope you appreciate this. Please like and subscribe and share this to your friends, and see you around.